The Survivor Specialists are back, and today we have our Survivor 49 Episode 5 predictions and power rankings. And I am joined by Erik Reichenbach from Survivor Fans versus Favorites 1 and 2. He is here. Three names in the bottom here. What is this Erik that is going on here?
That's my username. You just enter any username, and I just typed Erik 3 times.
Okay. I was just wondering if that was like a reference to something that I was not aware of, that, this was when I was getting called out, or maybe this is the amount of times that you have to keep watching that damn clip that they just managed to put into every single season of Survivor. You'll always be famous here.
It'll never die. Yeah.
Never
die.
So you got a lot going on here with your Dabu Doodles and everything, and you've been staying committed to the Survivor fan base. And I know that you've been pretty vocal with the ups and downs of the show and everything. So I'm excited to have you on here to dive into the final 13 of this season and kind of see how you're feeling as you're making these doodles. Are you still loving Survivor as much, or is it kind of the doodles are what are keeping you going?
The doodles are fun. They're a good expression for me to like say what I want to say. I'm trying to think about, there's been so much that's been going on over the years. Survivor really has like a literalism kind of thing going on lately, where Jeff will like spoon feed what you're supposed to focus on and what's going on. They do a lot of like meta narration, like they coach everybody, or they include in the show like Survivor's great. Like the answer that Survivor has for what's great about Survivor is Survivor. Mm-hmm. When I think years ago, there were a lot of people cast that were not super fans, and they cared more about stuff in their life than they cared about Survivor. And so Survivor had more of a like new storyline every time, where people weren't like so focused on the meta game and the meta narrative. You might learn about, something else about the people. So I have editing is like a whole thing, and I've dived, whatever the word is, way more into editing and meta narrative than I thought I would. And it's because you watch so much and you kind of pick up on things. And in a way, this show has kind of gone that way. Like, I think we can safely say the majority of people the last couple seasons have been super fans, or they've been coached enough that they watch it and they feed into the same ideas and the same stuff.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. And it's funny because we do our recap on Wednesday. Sunday, I always do this prediction power rankings. And then on Thursdays, we do an episode called Digging Deeper, where we'll dig deeper into the episode that just aired. But this last episode that we did, we had Peridium on. I don't know if you watch any of Peridium's videos here on YouTube. We had him on, and we almost talked nothing about the actual episode of this that had just aired. We really talked more about Survivor as a whole, where Survivor's at, where it's going. And I know that if you're on the show, that can get tiring, right? If you're coming here to hear what are people going to say about my gameplay, my cast, whatever, it can get old to hear just a constant conversation about where the show is at and what's going on. But like you said, it's kind of the way that they're pushing it. I mean, you were on both Fans versus Favorite seasons, and I think we both know with absolute certainty that the fan tribes on those seasons were less of fans than what we're watching now. Today, and so it's a different storyline. It's just a totally different thing.
Yeah. I mean, they could do Fans versus Favorites now, but it wouldn't be meaningless. Everybody seems to be a fan,
Yeah. I always say they should do the Fans versus Favorites now with people who are the diehards. This is my pitch to get myself on the show, is like get people who have been doing podcasts and have their TikToks and all of that, and make us the fans tribe, because then we actually have relationships with some of the favorites. And I think a fan could actually win this time as opposed to the last two. So that's my pitch for myself. It hasn't worked yet, but maybe one day.
I have no idea what the deal is with casting. I think Jeff has a more heavy hand in it, if I had to guess. I would love to see a Fans versus Favorites now with, like you're saying, like diehard, like podcasters or TikTokers or whatever. And then the other tribe literally pick people that you just recruit. You go find people that aren't watching Survivor, like a Randy type of person, who like maybe they hate Survivor, maybe they hate reality TV, but you give them enough money to play it. Like, that would be a fascinating season.
I agree. I like that idea. And I think that's why some of the people who've shined through in the new era have been people who aren't so obsessed with the show. Somebody like David from last season. These are people where, they might be coached up to know what to say when they're talking to their producer, but at the same time, they're not that robotic. I'm so happy to be here. And there's some casting choices that have worked with that. I think Andy worked really well as somebody who was a big fan who also played the game. But I think more often than not on a season like this, one of the biggest complaints I've had is just how bad the editing of there's 4 characters on this season and everybody else feels
Right.
like they're kind of falling to the wayside.
Right.
It gets frustrating.
Right. Right.
So
I get that. I agree with that. I want to get we're way off topic, but to get back to your point, I love doing the comic still. I get to have like an interaction with the people that are like new players because I honestly, I go to no events anymore. I'm pretty much parked on Instagram and Reddit for Survivor stuff. I'm involved in that enough that like daily I'll see Reddit posts that are relevant to me and I'll respond. And people are like, wow, you're responding. Yeah, because I'm still a fan. And I live on Reddit because I have a pretty busy life with my son and my day job and stuff. So, um, yeah. So the Doodles have kept me into the community in a way that, I can't go to a Bryson Wen event. I
mhm.
can't go to like a charity event or something.
And you're up in Michigan still, right?
Yeah. We lived
Yeah,
in
no,
Texas for a little bit. We bounced around. My wife and I lived in California for a little bit, back to Michigan, to Texas, and now back to Michigan. So we live in
mhm.
like the Ann Arbor, Ypsilanti area of Michigan.
Gotcha. Yeah, and they don't send anybody up to
No,
Michigan. I know Bryce and one have been all over the place, but they went to Milwaukee. I think that's probably the closest to you, right?
Chicago. I think Chicago
Mhm.
actually might be the closest. It's 3.5 hours, 3 hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you ever see Eric at an event, take advantage of that moment to take a photo because you're
Rare.
seeing a rare it's like the wild Pokemon being
Yes.
sighted, you know.
Yes.
You never know when it's going to happen. But so let's talk about what we've seen so far on this season. So we've had a disaster tribe, and then last week we got the tribe split, and we got one of the people in the minority going home with Matt. What's your take on kind of how these first 4 episodes have gone?
Kelly fell apart, and I honestly don't know why. It honestly does seem like random dumb luck. The snake thing, various other things just didn't pan out. It seems like a coin flip. Honestly, that's why Kelly did so bad. My comic this week, I'm going to try and focus on. Oh my god, I can't remember her name now. Being cursed. She's the one
Oh,
that moved
Sophie.
over. Yes, Sophie. Thank you. Sophie is going to be the black cat essentially in this next comic that I'm working on because she's like, I'm not cursed, and she says she's a lost puppy dog, but really she's more of like a black cat. Like she showed
Yeah.
up and they lost again. Um, there was a really good conversation online. I'm trying to remember now who talked about this, but they said they didn't like tribe swaps because of how random it was, in that
Mhm.
you know, Matt and his tribe, they didn't lose anything. They've won all the way to that point, and then the swap happens and they get screwed. And this is pretty common in Survivor when this happens. But the way that they framed it was like this felt very unfair, and they referenced Karamoan with the fans tribe with Matt on that tribe, as well as Mike. Everybody calls him Snowy, Michael Snow.
Mhm.
How they got screwed out too during a swap, and it's so random. I mean, if they had idols, it would be a different story. If one of them happened to have an idol, it would be a huge play and it would be a great setup. But in the way that it happened, it felt like randomly, like you just lost, and there's nothing. Everything was out of your control. And then also, kind of working against them was that, Rizzo and his band of 4 had the power in that situation. They were all really solid together, and so there was
Mhm.
no breaking any of that. So really, they just got a really bad hand.
Well, and like I keep saying, I think this goes back to casting. The problem is you have 3 tribes of 6.
Yeah,
And on the yellow tribe, there's almost no conflict, and they're a dominant tribe. And then on the red tribe, there's almost no conflict, and they're a dominant tribe. And then on the
yeah,
blue tribe, there's almost no conflict, and they're the disaster tribe. They just feel bad every time they have to vote somebody out. And I think that's
right,
really what the root of this problem is, because a lot of times Survivor, I feel like in the 40s and even in the 30s, this goes back pre Winners at War, in my opinion. A lot of times with Survivor, they do say, okay, we can do a random tribe swap because we have so many advantages and so many twists in the game. And I think they were trying to test something out with 49 in case
yeah,
some of those votes from the fans came back for 50 and said, what if we tried to do fewer of this or less of whatever, less advantages? Who knows? And now what's happening is because they've been using the advantages as a crutch for so long, they don't really know what else to do. And when there's no conflict between the tribe mates, you're getting essentially a pre-20, really pre-15 season of
yeah,
everybody's getting along. So of course, one tribe is going to try to take out the other tribe. And the fact that there were 3 tribes to start, Sophie and Alex are just going to be adopted the way Malcolm and Denise were adopted way back in the day.
yeah, exactly. That last episode did feel more of an old school season in that respect. And what happens with an episode, if there's no strategic, nuance going on? Like, it's pretty cut and dried what's going to happen. This is where the character element, the other element of the story, needs to come into play, because maybe somebody who's never played in a game like Survivor, they handle this unfairness in a different way. They break down crime, they talk about their family life and how tough it has been for them. Maybe they come from a different side of the, economic spectrum. So like, this is their one shot, and now they're like begging people. And Survivor has all these game bots and fans. And so it's pretty much like, oh, I'm on the outs. What can I do? There's no character to drive the story at that point, because, yeah, like, the risk is there. This person's going to go home, but there's no depth in it past the strategic, like, meta game. So we don't get anything as viewers.
Mhm.
We get kind of a boring episode.
Well, and like I was saying on the recap, it's Jason versus Sophie and the 4 from Uli. I'm rooting for the 4 from Uli and
Yeah.
Sophie. I'm not rooting for Jason. And I think that's really what it comes down to with this character building and stuff. Even if Jason goes home next week or this week, whatever it is, he's still in a 5-1 disadvantage. Back in the day, they would milk that for all it was worth. And now I feel like they're not doing it. And they're saying, well, if he's not important to the story, let's just pretend he's not there. Now, look, I get sometimes people go out on the island and they don't click, right? Speaking of Philippines, people talk about Carter all the time. He was amazing in auditions. He did all this crazy stuff. You look at his TikTok and Instagram now, he's big and jacked and whatever, but he just did not click when he got on the island. It just wore him down. But when you have a 5-1 disadvantage, find a way to make that person mildly interesting. Like, give me something from Jason, even if he's giving you nothing, because that's an easy storyline to tell and an easy one to give us. And instead, I'm coming into this episode going, I'm supposed to be rooting for the big power. You rarely see that in Survivor.
This is super frustrating. And I know why they're making the choices that they make with editing too. Like, maybe there was a storyline there with, Jason or Matt. They want to pump up Rizgod. They want to pump up, the Uli, the like Sophie's story. They want to pump up, like you said, those few characters into like these super almost celebrities within the show. Like, they're a celebrity in the show in that way. And we saw this in Caramoan. That's one of my biggest gripes about Caramoan. They focused on Philip and Brandon and Cochran for pretty much the whole show. So I know that's what they've been doing for a long time, and it's frustrating as a viewer, because you're right, like, we should hear Jason's story, and that's super frustrating for Matt and Jason, who have waited so long to get on the show, but they don't owe it to them. They don't. At the end of the day, the production doesn't owe it to them. They want to make a great show, and they believe pumping up Rizgod to be the super celebrity before he goes on to, like, super celebrity within the show until he goes on 50 is the way to. That's the strategic thing that they have to do as a production company. So that is. I would love, again, I think someone else talked about this, a Big Brother feed for Survivor would be insane. And they've gone so far with behind the scenes stuff. They're like right there. They're on the precipice of, like, who cares if you see a cameraman in shot? They've already shown so much behind the scenes already. They could just go there and it would be a completely different show.
Yeah. And I feel like that's one of the things that a lot of people have been trying to pitch is, why aren't we using Paramount Plus to do that? Right. Or something, even if you can't show 24 hours a day because it's different, you're in much more of a different element. But why aren't we using Paramount Plus for, hey, you want to go watch 3 extra hours of Survivor that's half edited and not color corrected? Go do it. And people would do it. Yeah, absolutely. The diehards would find it.
I think years ago, when I was doing the People comics with Stephen Fishbach, I was watching the show like an hour, like a day after it aired, just for free on CBS. And Stephen was like, this isn't going to work because I need to go live like that night or the day after. So I got an early live feed, and it didn't have any editing. Like, it was like pretty loose in terms of how it looked, but it was fantastic. Like, it was awesome. So yeah, the capability, I think, is there.
I think that would be awesome. And then we can get that, because a lot of times they just post the behind the scenes or the extra scene, the deleted scene, the scene that's been edited, color corrected, was about to go into the episode and they cut it at the last second. But if we're getting 1 or 2 of those a week, I almost never watch those, because people are like, oh, this was really important. if it was important, they wouldn't have cut it. And I know
Right.
that. So I'd
Right.
rather it be, here's what the story is. Now, if you want to go get more information, go get more information. I used to love watching the Ponderosas back in the day. And then obviously they stopped doing the Ponderosas.
Yeah.
They had Ponderosas through Caramoan, right? You had Ponderosas on your season the
Yeah, they
second time.
did. They
Yeah.
did. I remember talking about my medevac on that one, and they started it on Micronesia, which was like this. They're
Yeah.
like, "There's this weird. We're gonna try this weird, fun thing," but that was fantastic. That was super
Bones
awesome.
were the best thing ever when it was just everybody
Yeah.
being nasty to each other. They made Kenny and
Oh
Crystal
yeah.
eat alone. It was just like so
That
brutal.
that's what they lost. Like people are like, "Oh, old school." They're old school versus new era. They just need regular old people. They need some not.
Mhm.
They can have Survivor super fans. Those people are great. They're fantastic. We should have that. But you need everyday people who Survivor's not their favorite thing. Their favorite thing
Mhm.
might be like, I don't know, whatever job they do, grave digging. Like
Mhm.
that might be a good
Yeah.
guy. So
Yeah. They've only had one gravedigger on the show. You would think with the success they would have had two, but here we are.
oh, they had somebody in mortuary services on Pearl
Yeah,
Islands.
Dara. Yep.
Yes. Yep.
And then Stacy on South Pacific was also mortuary or like ran a funeral home or
Yes.
something like that.
Yes.
So yeah, fun times. Anyway,
Yeah.
so obviously we have the Savannah and Riz God, and our fans know. I mean, if you go look at our thumbnails around, you know that who's on 50. We've talked about it to death. You have Savannah and Riz God who are getting big edits. You have Alex and Sophie B who are getting huge edits because they were on the Disaster Tribe. I think you
Yeah.
kind of have everybody else. Where do you fall? And we'll get into the rankings in a little bit here, but when you start looking at those other players, the other Hina players, the other Uli players who are being overshadowed a little bit more, where do you fall on those? Is there anybody in particular that's standing out to you? Is there anybody that you're saying, hey, that was a good casting choice? I'm enjoying watching them play. Anything?
I'm looking at the cast right now, so I make sure I have everybody's name and everything right.
Mhm.
Oh, Kelly's wiped out. I would have loved to see Jake go farther,
Yeah.
honestly. And I don't know if there's some conspiracy theories like he wanted to quit. I see no evidence of that being a quit or anything like that. I think that dude wanted to be there, so I don't know where those are coming from. But I'd love to see Jake go further. Hina tribe. I'm looking at old Hina tribe here. Steven is super interesting. I'm really interested to see how Steven does. And I feel like he's going to be a post merge story, but
Mhm.
he will not win. MC has not said a lot, but what she has said has been amazing. Christina's hilarious. Like, I can tell Christina is like the heart of the Hina group. She's very emotional. Like, everybody loves her. You can just tell.
Mhm.
Jason, that the edit from that last show made me think he may stick around. This is just like the start of his story, but we really don't know. There's kind of question marks around Jason. Um Uli. Knowing Let me put 50 aside.
Yeah.
Rizzo, Savannah, Nate are going the distance. However this happens, they're going to go deep into the merge. I think that's your group that's going to betray. Someone is going to betray somebody at some point. It's likely going to be Rizzo betraying somebody else. Oh, Sage and Shannon. It sounds like those two have something coming down the turn in terms of they kind of are like frenemies with each
Yeah.
other. Sage seems less adept in the game than Shannon. So Shannon might orchestrate something now that the swap has happened. Like she might be the one that goes to war, or so to speak. And then Jawan, I love Jawan, but strategically, it looks like he's not picking up on some of the things, or he's outside that majority alliance. So I'm not sure what'll happen there. Um, Someone will break at some point in Uli or Hina. So someone's going to break, and the question is, what's going to happen at that point? Um, Honestly, there's so much that could happen. I just see that core group of 3 on Uli as super tight and super strong, and they all seem pretty laser focused on strategy and work together. Hina may take the hint here that they just voted out Matt and like tighten up and realize they have to get their strategy in place against Uli. And then Sophie could potentially squeak through. Sophie or Alex could potentially squeak through.
Mhm. Do you think that after seeing Matt go home, knowing that it was a 4-2-1, do you think the other tribe that has the 4-2-1 advantage now, Hina has the 4-2-1, Any chance they throw a challenge here to try to
Yes.
get rid of Shannon or Sage to even this up?
Yes, and my estimation is we're in the new era. We're with a bunch of game bots. Strategy is more important than, the adventure or the experience. So I could totally see a throne challenge to do that.
Because
Yeah.
you were on 2 seasons that both had tribe swaps, so you've experienced what that was like and all of that. So when a tribe swap happens and everything, your game starts to get blown up, you were obviously playing in an era where advantages were becoming a thing, and then you played in an era where advantages were the thing.
Yeah.
What's going through your mind there? Are you saying, "Oh, I'm going to stick with these old party lines," or are you trying to make the relationships? Because it does feel like Shannon and Sage feel like they might be trying to make the relationships. Matt and Jason, I really didn't get that they were trying to make the relationships that much. And that might just be the editing, but it didn't feel like they were. It felt like
Yeah.
Jason literally said, "We go to a merge, I'll protect you all. I'll make sure you guys don't get voted out." What is that strategy? I don't understand it.
So there is the unnatural bond that happens on Survivor where you spend like literally 5 days and you're like family because there's
Mhm.
no distractions like cell phones and you're all going through something really weird at the same time. It may be simply that, like just there's a super strong bond that he's developed and he's not thinking strategically. And take it from me, it's easy to not think strategically out there. It's easy to think like
Mhm.
in a different, you're kind of in a fishbowl in that way. We have the luxury of sitting on the couch at home with food and family and stuff. You can tell who's thinking strategically by what they're saying and what their interviews and their stuff. Like you can tell the Uli, those three on Uli, for example, they're super strategic and they're not letting go of any of that. They're not thinking with emotions. They're thinking like boom, boom, boom. This is a game. Um, you could tell with Matt, like he was like a mix, like some
Mhm.
emotion, but some strategy at the same time. He had a little bit of both. But I see Jason as just this is like a new experience, and that's kind of overwhelmed him. So he's not thinking strategically. He's not seeing the optics of like saying Hina strong when you've just swapped tribes. And that came out in that tribal council. They basically lambasted him. They were like, dude, like we just talked to you guys, and one of you guys is Hina strong. Like
Mhm.
we can't work with that. And it's like that awareness that wasn't there before.
Yeah, I was so confused with the conversations that were happening. And then Matt, he was trying to go based off of his relationship with Jawan from the journey that he did with Jawan and Jake, and hoping that that
Yeah,
would blossom into something. He did not realize, though, just because Sophie was coming in as the odd one out from a tribe and from the Kella tribe and being the only person, he didn't realize that that meant that she was just automatically going to come to the minority numbers. And
yeah,
he thought that he had her in his pocket, and there was really no reason for him to think that. And that's what was
yeah,
confusing. When he still wrote down Nate's name at the end, I said, okay, Matt's plan wasn't a bad plan, but it was a bad plan with the people he was on the island with. And I
yeah,
don't know where that disconnect happened, because as a fan, I'm watching this happen and I say, he talked to Sophie 0 minutes and 0 seconds and just
right,
thought that she was on his side. And Sophie very wisely said, "No, I'm going to the side with numbers. I'm not going to put myself in some Sarah Lucina type swing position and be the one who ends up going home."
right. That she did the right thing. Sophie exactly read the situation correctly. She immediately said, "Hey, I got nobody. I'm with you. Let's vote out these guys."
Mhm.
Also, she recognized that, yellow and red were equal in number, up to that
Yeah.
point. So they needed to target each other. So some kind of disconnect there. Or there was maybe something Sophie said that was edited out with respect to like, I swear on my mother or something, I will
Mhm.
never, some crazy statement was made, which that's when I always go to the exit interviews. If there's something that's really weird that happens, I go to the exit interviews and I read. And and then there's this whole other meta game you have to play with, like, did they tell the truth in their exit interview?
Mhm.
Because you have exit interviews like Rome from a few seasons ago where like I couldn't tell what Rome was saying was true or not in his exit interview. And he's making all these crazy claims. So, but yeah, maybe something was said we missed. That's all I can
Yeah.
think of.
I know, because from what we watched, it just seems so obvious, and maybe that's just because, like you said, the edit is being set up where it's Rizgod, it's Nate,
Yeah,
it's Savannah, it's Sophie, and maybe we're going to get some sort of betrayal in there. But I will say, when it comes to Survivor in general, seasons have to have more than one betrayal to be satisfying.
yes,
And if you're
yes,
if you're going to set up a season where the entire thing is going to be based around one betrayal at Final 7 or Final 6, that's going to be rough. And I mean, that's kind of what
yeah,
happened with season 48. David got voted out of the game. Nothing happened for 2 episodes. Shaheen got voted out of the game. It felt like a betrayal, but at that
Yeah.
point, it was pretty clear that Kyle or Camilo was probably going to win the season. So by the time Shaheen got voted out, it didn't feel like it was as impactful. And I sit here and I watch this, and I know that the fan base has been very negative, and I've been pretty down on this season to start too. And I try to find some sort of positive, because I know that when people come, they want to listen, they want to enjoy themselves, right? That you don't want to just hear constant, incessant complaining. But my thing is, last season, David went home at final 9, I think it was. So from final 8 on, we had a rough string of episodes. Really nothing happened. 8 was bad with Star. 7 was bad with Mary. Shaheen's blind side should have felt bigger than it was. Mitch was very predictable. So you're talking that finale, that's 4 very predictable episodes. Now we've had 4 episodes where even if you were really invested in the Jake situation here, the rest of it hasn't really popped. And so you're talking over if you add this together, it's 8 episodes. That's over a half season of Survivor in a row now that we have watched where it hasn't really been that exciting. And I think that's where the frustration of the fans is coming, because it's saying, we need an episode that's really going to bring us to life. We need something that's just going to explode and make us say, I can't wait to go talk about that. I can't wait to be excited about my show again. And that's just not happening.
Yeah. Well, think of it like, the game Plinko in Plinko. It's like a big wall with a bunch of little nails, and you drop all the balls in and they kind of bounce through to the end. And one gets to the end. Okay, that's Survivor. If you have all super fans who have this like meta idea of how to play, they know how to play the game, they're good at playing the game. You drop them in, those are weighted balls. So they're going to go in a straight line through the maze as best they can to the end. If you have people that are like off the street, they don't care about Survivor, they're going to do unpredictable crap. Mm-hmm. So they're going to be bouncing. They're not weighted. They're ping pong balls. They're going to actually be bouncing, and stuff is going to shake up naturally. You don't need to add any advantages to that. You don't need to add anything, any kind of producer interference at all. You just drop a bunch of random people into the Plinko machine, and it's going to bounce all crazy and get to the end. I feel like Gabon, in a lot of ways, was a perfect season with that kind of thing. Like, it just went off the rails. Mm-hmm. And strategically, there wasn't a lot of crazy stuff in Survivor Gabon. I think the most interesting thing was Bob made a fake idol that looked really like a real idol. Like, that was the most interesting advantage thing I think that happened in like Survivor Gabon. Not to say that's my favorite season, but I think that's the problem. And I agree with you that it seems very procedural. A lot of the seasons recently have felt procedural.
Yeah, and it felt like with season 46, they had started to go the right direction. You had Q on the season. You had Kenzie, who wasn't a huge super fan. She's somebody who started watching a little bit later in the run. You had Ben, who was a fan, but really was more of a character than really a player. He wasn't coming in saying, I'm going to play the game in this exact way. Maria was a little bit more of a character. Right. So it felt like that cast had started to go in the right way. And then 47, you ended up with a lot of game bots, but you ended up with a lot of game bots who were willing to play the game. And that was where Genevieve became so popular, and where Rachel became popular, and Sam became popular, and Andy became popular, and Teeny becomes popular. And you had all of these different types of game players because it was a good mix, right? Gabe, I don't think, was as big of a fan as some of the other people. Saul wasn't as big of a fan as some of the other people. Yeah. And so you had a good mix. And for some reason in 48 and 49, it has felt like, maybe it's just the people that they're focusing on, but it has felt very run of the mill. And I know that somebody like Sage isn't the biggest Survivor fan. I know that. I know MC, she keeps saying the new era is better than old school because she started watching in season 45. She doesn't know the game that well, but those are also people that we're barely hearing from. If we hear more from them, give us some delusional strategy that makes no sense, because then we can actually dissect something. That's fun.
Yeah. I wrote in my notes before we had this call, the idea of literalism, like Jeff telling you what to focus on. And then the show saying a lot, we're great. Like, they edit in any comment where it's like, wow, look at the set, look at this, we're great. The show is great. Like, we know you guys got Emmy nods or won Emmys or whatever. Like, you don't need, if it's great, if it's truly great, you don't need to like pump that into the episode. Like, focus on making an episode that's interesting. So a self-aggrandizing, that's what I wrote. So yeah, they're not showing us those. Like, I would love to see more from those people that aren't the game bots. So,
and what did you think about Sophie on the mat going at them saying, this is a terrible reward, I don't want a banana?
Yeah. I mean, well, they're only, was it 8 days in, 7 days in, something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a whole conversation on how many days they're there, and that was more like a budget. That was like a budget thing more than anything, honestly. But yeah.
I like that they kept that in, though. Of course, though, it was funny because then the internet jumped on, well, the girl who complained about the reward is also the person who's been invisible the entire season. So maybe don't go on Survivor and complain. You have to do fried chicken and waffles song and dance to get any screen time
You
nowadays.
do, yes, you do. You absolutely do.
All right, well, let's rank these people in terms of who you think is safest or who you think is most likely to go home here. So we have 13 people left. We have, I think, a very straightforward split. It was very straightforward last week with Matt going home. I've been very vocal about who I'm going to put at my bottom, and I kind of know how this is going to go. But let's try to have some fun with this for, I guess, the first 10 people who probably are pretty safe this week. But who do you think the safest person coming into this week is?
I mean, it's got to be Riz. As much as I hate to say it, honestly, I'm not against Riz, but just it's very much in our face that Rizzo's doing well with the idol, with his alliance, with the numbers. He's just safe, just a safe guy. I think Riz, and then shortly after him, probably Savannah and Nate.
Yeah, see, I literally go the exact same order. I just go Savannah first, Rizzo second, Nate
Okay.
third. It's the same thing though, because when you look at that tribe right now, Rizzo has the idol. So maybe this is also bad luck from production standpoint where the people in power have the idols, because MC's on one tribe where she would have the ability to get the idol if her tribe loses, and she has the 4-2 advantage. On the other side,
Right.
Rizgod has the idol. He's got the 4-2 advantage. When you look at this tribe, Jawan, Sophie, and Jason would have to flip, knowing that the best they can do is force a 3-3. Somebody on the other side would have to lose a vote, and Rizgod would have to not play as idol in order for Rizgod, Nate, or Savannah to go home. There's just no way any of those three people go home. And I wish that there was more to say about it. I wish I had more of a big strategic, whoa, this is crazy. I wish I could have a hot take. Those are the three safest people. And like you were saying with Karamoan, where when you start to really focus in on just very specific players, Cochran, Brandon, Phillip, and then you had Malcolm and Reynolds, you knew the people who were going to stay around in that season, at least to the merge. You knew who was going to get there. Even if Brandon obviously had his situation. But when you sit there and you think about it, you could tell where it was going. And that's where I feel right now. If Rizgod, Nate, or Savannah go home this week, that will be the most shocked I have ever been in the history of Survivor. Ever. Like, I'm talking 49 seasons. That will be the most shocked I've ever been in the history of the show.
So when you have this like procedural system where you're like, I can predict what's going to happen given what we have in front of us, the only variable is, random chance, like act of God, like a tree falls on Rizgod, which we're assuming doesn't happen, or active production. So they decide, oh, the next challenge, we're going to completely do something crazy. We're going to mix everybody up and make separate tribes, and both tribes go to tribal. And that's like a forced thing, in that way. So yeah, it does seem, I would be shocked too, but if it was a production switch, I wouldn't be that shocked because they know maybe it's a little procedural at this point. We need to mix it up. That's the only thing I could see happening. Go ahead.
They went to two tribes officially for the first time since March of 2020. If they break that up after one episode to randomly swap again, I think the internet's going to explode. You might actually see people on Reddit, your Reddit groups that you're always like posting and reading, whatever. That might shrink significantly if they abandon this first time we're getting two tribes in just one episode. I think people will lose their minds.
Yeah. Like that's the only unpredictable. It's very procedural. It absolutely is procedural. And that's what I think. I mean, I think that's what a lot of people are picking up on. But yeah, those are my three: Rizzo, Savannah, Nate. So you're right. Maybe Rizzo's second because it puts a target on him having an idol. Maybe that's the only thing. But I don't see Nate or Savannah being like, "Oh, let's blindside Rizzo" at this point because there's no need to. It would be a post merge. That would be like a post merge thing, or like right before the merge.
I feel like I put Savannah at one, even though she doesn't have the idol, and maybe it's more looking further ahead than saying necessarily this week, because I think all three of these people are interchangeable. The reason I go Savannah at one, though, is I feel like she's been the one telling us everything about the other players, whereas Rizgod's been telling us a lot about Rizgod. Yeah. Savannah's the one who Matt said last week, you're the first person to ask me what I did before I started working at the airport. And so she got the information. And I feel like that's the edit we've been seeing from her. So for her to get suddenly blindsided would shock me because I feel like she's the one who actually has. I feel like her and Jawan have a better relationship than Jawan thinks, or Jawan thinks that they have a better relationship than they really do, but he doesn't feel that same way, I don't think, with Rizgod or with Nate. He feels that way with Savannah. So I think Savannah's doing the legwork. So I put her at 1, but again, these are interchangeable.
You're talking about infrastructure. You're talking about Savannah setting up other connections that are not her, like number 1, number 2, which is like a Parvati. That's a Parvati thing. Parvati set up, different franchises with other people in that way. And that's a really smart move. And that's basically defending against unpredictable elements. And that's true. That's a good point, I think.
So who would you put at number 4?
Number 4, it's got to be the yellows that are in power on the other side, I would say. So that would probably be, it's not going to be Sage, maybe Shannon, maybe MC. MC's over there.
Because Shannon and Sage are the ones on the bottom there. Because they're from original.
Oh, they're the minority. Yep. Sorry, my bad. So sorry. It'd be more like, dang it. Someone made this comment online that Sage, Shannon, and Sophie Segretti all look very similar. And I do see that now looking at all their faces on the side here. I think MC, that it would be that group of MC, Sophie, Steven, and Christina. It would be that group would be in your 4, 5, 6, 7. And I think in the same way, MC might be lower, like she's more of a threat because she may be seen as someone with an idol with too much power.
Yeah, I go MC at 5. I put Sophie at 4, Balerdi, not Sophie from Blue.
Oh,
not Sophie
okay.
From Yellow.
Okay.
Because I just feel like there's no way they're going to turn on her this episode. She so easily went in and just said, hey, I'm with all of you. The entire edit last week was what a great person she was. She's so natural. She's really showing us her authentic self. We just love Sophie. They're talking about how Sophie's a part of their team. I feel like Sophie becomes, if Shannon or Sage go from the other side, Sophie becomes the Uli 6th person and gives them the numbers moving forward. So I feel really good about her. I put MC at 5. I put Steven at 6. I put Christina at 7. I wish I could be dramatic and change things, but I really don't, because MC and Steven have been shown to be the brains over there. And then Christina last week having that confessional about her mom, they voted her out the week after that. I'm sitting here going, we heard nothing about this woman the entire season. She gives us this really emotional thing about her mom, and then you boot her the next week in a blind side. That would be crazy to me.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. I don't like how much we inspect the edit. Like, as much as I love to like dissect the edit, I don't like that. I would like to really focus on the show. So I'm almost thinking I would like Survivor production to like edit episodes not knowing who wins, like edit them one by one as they go, because that would be really fantastic, but I don't think they'll ever do that. It
almost felt like they were doing that back during like Heroes versus Villains, because Sandra wasn't in the first 7 episodes really, and it almost felt like they didn't know that she won, because it was Russell Robb, it was Tyson, it was Colby, Rupert, Amanda, James, it was all these people who don't get to the end. Jerry was barely involved in it, and Parvati was involved in it because her back was against the wall, but Sandra was nowhere to be found, and it felt like that's what they're doing now. Since Erica won season 41, any player who gets a 0 confessional episode is immediately out of the running to win. Every winner since Erica has had a confessional in every single episode, whether they go to tribal council, don't go to tribal council, there's a medevac, whatever it is, had a confessional every time.
See, that sucks.
And what sucks about it, Eric, is if they still manage to give so much screen time to everyone, you'd say, oh, wow, there's 10 or 11 people who can win this at Final 13. Yes. But the problem is on this season, there's already 4 or 5 people with 0s. So I've already knocked mine down to 8 people. That's it.
Oh, that sucks. That sucks. And that doesn't feel good for those people, Yeah,
you finally got out there, and this is it.
Anyway, so 1 through, what is this now? 1 through maybe 8, we've pretty much defined as the superiors. You're putting Sophie Kelly, Blue Sophie, I'll call her Blue Sophie, in the middle there. Where did you have her at? 5?
I had her at 4. So I went Savannah, Rizzo, Nate, Sophie, MC, Steven, Christina.
Okay. Just as she's basically pulled into that, to Uli, essentially. I
think she's more in with them than Jawan is right now. Jawan was my preseason winner pick, so I've really loved Jawan, and I'm really rooting for Jawan. But I feel like Sophie, if Rizgod's going to blind somebody, blindside somebody, I could see him blindsiding Jawan to keep
Yeah.
Sophie. That won't happen this week. I have Jawan lower, but I still feel good about him. But that's my one concern with Jawan for sure.
I could see Rizzo blindside Nate or contemplate it, and it could be like this big moment, kind of like the way Maria and Charlie kind of had
Mm.
that falling out. But yeah, I feel like the betrayal's coming from Rizzo. It could be Savannah. I would be surprised if it was Savannah, but I could see Rizzo want to do it to make his, make his mark.
Do you think Savannah and Rizzo do work lockstep for literally the entire season? Do you think that it's going to be that straightforward and it's
I
it's that easy?
I do, and the reason being, sadly, this how much knowing they're on 50
Mhm.
together, and they want Rizzo to do well. Production clearly wants Rizzo to do well. They're going to give him Savannah. I think they do work well together, and I think it's because even though they're both strategically minded people, they have a difference of how they play. Savannah maybe more infrastructure, like more connections. Rizzo, this like charismatic, I'm gonna win it all kind of look. And so they think they have different arguments to tribal. Like they think
Mm.
this person's a good person, but I can beat them with my arguments. So I think that they will go the distance.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe that's why Jawan won't get blindsided and Nate would, because Nate's got a good story. He's the family guy. He's got a different story than either of them. Whereas
Yeah,
Jawan, they might be able to say, hey, Jawan, somebody had posted online that Jawan's getting the I'm a good guy, but it hasn't broke my way at it, which is the Owen, Jake,
yeah, yeah,
Romeo. Like we're
yeah,
getting that kind of edit from him where it's, man, any other season, maybe Jawan could win this, but on this season, he's just not on the right side of the way things are shaking out. And it's kind of clear early on, even though I keep trying to hold out hope he'll pull this out, but
yeah.
it's kind of clear.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because I could see, and I honestly, I'm terrible at predictions, absolutely terrible at predictions. If Rizzo voted somebody out with a betrayal and Savannah is like on board with it, like betrayals go both ways. Like maybe a
Mhm.
betrayal was seen as like you did it, it was incorrect. Why did you do that? It hurts him at tribal. Whereas Rizzo may think, this is a good thing. This was like a survivor resume builder. So,
Mhm.
um, I see a lot of that where it's like a big move is basically interpreted in two different ways, negative or positive. Um, all right,
And
yeah,
it always depends on kind of the jury you're with too, right? And
yeah,
a lot of times with game bots, you'll get more respect for the big move than more
right,
negative for the big move because people will say, I understand this. Good job. I mean, in
right,
season 47, we have Andy straight up ask Rachel at Final Tribal Council, do you want to be seen as a Ben and a Mike? I'm sitting there going, what did Ben and Mike do? They won the game. Leave them alone. Like,
right,
but that's the feeling, and that's where some of the juries are going at this point. They know the game so well. They're thinking about it that way. Where then when you look at last season, there were people on that jury who were voting for totally different reasons than what a game bot would do. Now, ultimately, I think the same person won, whether it was going to be a game bot jury or not. I
right,
think Kyle was
right.
going to have the edge there, but you could get, I don't think there's enough bitter jury members to make it so that if you make a big move that screws somebody over, that you wouldn't win.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So, all right. So who do you have at number 8?
With this conversation, wait, how many are left? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
You,
There's 12 left?
there's 13 left. So you have
13
six.
left.
You have 6 left. Yeah, you haven't done
1, 2.
Sophie or Alex. You haven't done Jawan, Shannon, Jason, or Sage.
I still think Jawan is in a good place. I'd probably put Jawan next. I don't see it as such a. I feel like he's a post merge vote. I think he's a
Mhm.
post merge vote at that point. And Sophie, probably him and Sophie are in the same place. I think Alex. We don't really know what's going on that new tribe on New Hina. So Alex may be in that realm. I would put all three of them kind of in that realm of like I'm not really sure. And then I know for sure that Jason's going to be near the bottom. Jason and
Mhm.
possibly Sage. I have no idea. Let me make a list. Let me make a list here.
So I'll go ahead and I'll be in agreement with you here. On you had Jawan. You're saying Jawan, Sophie, Alex. I'd go Alex and Jawan here. Alex at 8, Jawan at 9. Again, I just get worried that if Uli
Okay.
gets too many numbers, they could say, hey, let's blindside Jawan. But I think Jawan running back to them with the information that Matt wants to vote out Nate, they have to say, okay, Jawan is loyal to us. Jawan is going to be a number for us, even if he's somebody that we need to vote out, even if he's periphery to our actual game plan. You still need to keep him around into the merge because you know he's going to be loyal because of how he just played that. But I'll give Alex the nod here because I do think that Alex is in the best. He's in just such a good spot with the fact that it's a 4-2-1 tribe. He's not being looked at. Hino will now see that one of their own members was voted out. So if they're going to go to tribal council, they're probably going to want to vote out an Uli. Why wouldn't you want to vote out an Uli, right? And
Right.
so that means Shannon or Sage would go. And I think that Alex potentially, if he really was feeling good about himself, could have teamed up with Shannon, Sage, and Christina because we saw the moment between Christina and Shannon last week. But now this whole entire preview is Sage being like, all right, Shannon,
Right.
let's fight.
Right.
So if Shannon and Sage are going to go at it, it's very obvious it's one of those two people going home if this tribe loses. And it's not going to be Alex, and Alex isn't going to have to do anything. He kind of falls almost into the exact same Sophie spot. And I think that's the bummer of this tribe swap. We finally got two tribe swaps. Two tribes. We finally got this, but it's the exact same dynamic on both sides. It's a 4-2. And then the one person who's left over is just joining the 4 to vote out one of the two. It's the exact same dynamic, which is just meh.
Yeah. All right. I put in the chat my list. I think that's now pretty nailed down.
Okay.
So it's 1 through 7 is pretty well defined. Rizzo or Savannah, Savannah or Rizzo, 1 or 2. Nate, MC for 4, Steven for 5, Christina for 6, Sophie S for 7. Then in kind of right along the same line, Jawan, Alex, Sophie, kind of like this middle ground because they're in the alliance or they're on the bottom with Jawan, or they're in that they're old Kelly, so could go either way. But Sophie may rise in the ranks, which you were talking about. And then at the very bottom, Shannon, Sage, Jason. And Shannon and Sage are way at the bottom because of that preview. And it's possible that, even though I think Shannon should be higher, she should feel safer. At the same time, if she starts fighting with Sage and they're also in the minority, it could be just a negative spiral about let's target each other.
It's one of those instances. So I have Sophie Segretti at 10. And then I go Sage at 11. I go Jason at 12. And I actually have Shannon at 13. And I think it's one of those instances where this tribe swap made it so that the better player becomes a bigger threat, right? It almost feels like one of those era, early 20s era tribe swaps where all of a sudden in Nicaragua, you get this swap and Tyrone and Eve are threats. And you're saying, wait, but Tyrone and Eve are two of the only people I know from the old people tribe. Yeah. And they get voted out because you're going, well, they would actually be pretty good at the game. And I feel like that's what happened to Shannon here. I feel like Shannon has done the work. She's gone out there. She's tried to make relationships. She feels like she's good with Christina. And then you have Steven who's saying, ooh, she's a gamer. This is scary. And then if Sage is going to play emotionally, they're going to say, well, let's go into a merge with Sage. She's not a threat to win. And Shannon is. So I have Shannon at the bottom and I have Sage a little bit safer. And the reason I don't put Jason at the bottom like you do is because I don't think they're going to do 2 challenges in a row that don't end in puzzles. And Jason's the best puzzle person. And I don't trust Survivor to say, sure, we can end 2 challenges in a row without puzzles.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And you did a version of the challenge they're doing this week, right?
I think so. Let me see that. Are you talking about the one that just aired 4 or are you talking about the next one, 5?
The next one where it's like the big cage thing, the big...
Oh, yeah. We did that. We didn't have to lift the cage. We just had to climb out of the cage. But yes, we did that.
Because that was the one that Laura sucked at and went home. One of the only fans on the fans tribe, right? She was the one who got voted out, I think, that episode.
Yeah, and I remember I ripped my arm open on the metal. Like there was a bunch of rebar on it. It was kind of and then someone else got cut really bad on it too. And this is also the kind of challenge. I think they do the big snake or something. You have to get something heavy over and like out of it. Yeah.
Because it looks like they're all physically picking something up, and I just assume that it's going to end in a puzzle. And every time Jason's done a puzzle, he's finished it in
destroyed
record
it.
time. So I feel like this is his time to shine. The problem is, though, if Jason's tribe loses, it's going to be a boring final 20 minutes of that episode because it is
Yeah.
very obviously going to be him who goes home.
I'm so conflicted about Shot in the Dark too, because Shot in the Dark is the complication when that happens. Like it's
Mhm.
pretty clear this person's going to go, but it's I don't know. It's just like it could be really really dramatic, but most of the time it's not.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that was just there to create anxiety or like drama around the episode, because then the majority alliance that clearly is going to vote this person out has to like, should we do this? Should we not do this? They're going to play their shot in the dark. Maybe we'll try another option where we eat one of our own. Like, I think that's the point of shot in the dark, is to introduce paranoia when it normally would just be a really straightforward vote. But again, that's like manipulating the system from production rather than letting it organically happen, because you've actually reduced the amount of advantages and you focus more on character or casting people that aren't
Mhm.
game bots. So I guess it's like, I don't know, in a lot of ways the Survivor like body, like the health of Survivor is like we're giving it a lot of additives instead of like letting it naturally exist.
And I think that's a good point too with Shot in the Dark, where Shot in the Dark was one of those advantages that was put into the game so that maybe it would create paranoia, but also it was one of those things that would try to make these very straightforward episodes, very straightforward boots, more dramatic. But the problem is, you used to be able to watch straightforward boots every week and still be entertained by what was
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
And that's just not the case anymore. And that was the argument I made during 48 was it used to be that if we were going to get Star and Mary back to back, that would happen every season. There'd be two very predictable boots back to back. But one of the best predictable boots in the history of Survivor is when Tom and Ethan or Tom and Lex go on the safari. I
Yeah.
don't even remember who goes home in that episode, but I know it was one of the Sambuhus. They go home. That's
Yeah.
what Lex calls them, at least the
Yeah.
Sambuhus.
Yeah.
But it's like they go home, and it's a straightforward boot, but that doesn't mean that it's a straightforward episode, and it's
Yeah.
still very fun to watch. And I feel like that's where it's been lost. So you introduce this, but here's my other problem with this, right? Jason's edit so far, and again, we don't want to look too much into the edit, or we try not to, but I can't help myself. I've been watching the show for 49 seasons. If he ends up getting a successful shot in the dark play, again, what a missed opportunity to make us be like, oh, hell yeah, because they did it great with Caleb in 45. That would suck if he played it successfully and we didn't really hear from him before or after.
Yeah. That makes me think he does at some point play it, and it either his story is just starting and it's going to evolve, or it could be that,
Yeah.
just
If he
no
were to
issue.
if he were to be successful in his shot in the dark, is that where you think that Sophie Bolardi would be the one that they would be willing to vote out? Or do you think that they would vote out Jawan instead?
It depends. Are they predicting he's going to use a shot in the dark? Because if they are, they're going to split the vote. If
Mhm.
they're not predicting anything's going to happen, he gets one vote and he could target
No,
anybody.
with the shot in the dark, he doesn't get a
Oh,
vote.
right.
should
You don't
give
get
up
a
your
vote. That's true. That's true. So, yeah, it probably would be Sophie in that instance, I would think.
Yeah.
I don't think they would vote out. I don't think they would vote out Jawan, because he literally comes back with information for them. Like he's
Yeah.
less strategic in a lot of ways than Sophie.
Now I'm more concerned about having Sophie at 4. I feel like
So,
I overlooked this.
so Jawan is not, from what we've seen, he's not as strategic, and you can't get too many strategic people together in the same alliance because they hate
Mhm.
that. And so I think Sophie, as a Kelly and a strategic person with 3 other somewhat strategic people, like she's more of a threat on that if you finally have to eat each other than Jawan. Jawan's going to just give them information. He literally ran over and gave them information from Matt. So that would be a situation I think Sophie would be the one.
Yeah. I think you might be right there. So yeah, I had Sophie at 4, but now if Jason plays a shot in the dark successfully and Sophie, who's been the star of the season so far, goes home because of it, oh boy.
Garbage.
Oh boy.
I mean, she might be a pre-merge person. I could see her arc.
Yeah.
They've given her so much attention. She could be the pre-merge arc of like the unlucky black cat. Literally everything has been against her. She got she looked to make inroads last episode. Like you said though, I don't think New Uli or what is this? New Kelly?
Yeah, it's New
Uli.
Kelly. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that they would go back to tribal again. I think you're going to have the other team go to tribal again.
Which would be Sand and her stage. So, all right. Well, who do you have as your winner for the season?
I don't think Rizzo or Savannah win. I don't think Nate wins. I think it might be somebody in the middle. One of these ones,
Mhm.
6, 7, 8, kind of in that rank. So let me pick out of there. Christina, Steven, maybe. Sophie may win. Sophie's kind of in that same realm as like Kelsey. Um, she's in that same realm as like who's won recently. Some of the people that have won recently.
Mhm.
I don't see Alex winning. I see someone strategic winning, more strategic minded winning. I don't see Rizzo, Savannah, Nate winning. I see that all breaking down in some way or getting just to the end or getting to finals. I honestly, I have a terrible track record of predicting this stuff. If I had to guess Sophie, I'm going to guess Sophie, even though I think she's at risk. And
Mhm.
I think a lot of people who win uh, end up in some amount of risk on the way to the end. So,
Yeah, and I think the show likes to show us the people being in risk because
yeah,
when you have Boston Rob and you have Kim, even Kim was getting shown as the Troyzan wants to boot Kim,
yeah,
so they were at least giving us, hey, she could be in danger. So they like to show their players in
yeah,
risk, even if they're the clear, obvious winner from very early on. So
right.
yeah, I think Sophie right now is probably where I would go as well. But now you
Yeah.
got me scared that if Jason plays the shot in the dark successfully, that would be crazy. But I have to assume he wouldn't based on everything we've seen. So we'll see.
The only other thing that could happen there is Sophie could take matters into her own hands and predicting that he's going to use his shot in the dark or hearing from him literally, I'm going to use my shot in the dark.
Mhm.
Sophie could say, let's flip the script. Jason, Sophie, Jawan flip it on somebody, which would be a massive upset and a huge change of predictability. I just don't see Jawan. Jawan would need some kind of awareness that he doesn't currently have in order to do something like that.
Yeah, when he went back to his group as quickly as he did with the information Matt gave, I said, okay, Jawan is in, and Savannah would be crazy to boot him before Final
Yes.
Seven.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep. Yep.
that's a guaranteed locked in vote in a game where votes and advantages and stuff can get thrown off so easily nowadays. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um,
I
so
I
go
don't think
ahead.
this is a terrible I don't think this is a terrible season, by the way. I think I do see a lot of hate online about it recently. I don't think this is a terrible season so far. I'm enjoying enough of it that I'm like, okay, I can watch. This is good.
I think for me, I was explaining it last week. I have not really enjoyed the first 4 episodes, but I do feel like the people we're being set up to care about are going to make for an interesting post merge. Like, I feel like if our final 11, you're talking jury phase of the game, is Steven, MC, Jawan, Nate, Sophie B, Alex, Savannah, Riz God, and then Sage and whoever else you want to throw in there. 8 of those 11 are legit. Okay, I am sitting down. I'm ready to watch what's going to happen. I'm ready to see how they're going to play out. Because I feel like the problem that 48 ran into was they under edited Mary and Mitch and Star so much that by the time you got to the final 8, you said, oh my God, there are 3 people that I know can't win. And even if I like them, I'm not as invested in them as I would like to be. So well, I haven't loved the first 4
Yeah.
episodes. I do have hope for the post merge, but there needs to be more than one big move on this season. There need to be multiple. Otherwise, this is going to be rough because I think we're in for a very predictable boot tonight or
Yeah.
Wednesday night.
Yeah. Tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. I hope we're wrong. Honestly, I hope we're wrong.
Yeah.
Hope it's not
Blindside me.
not like that. Yeah.
All right. Well, to turn the tension real quick before we go here, you've been a fan forever. So who are you most excited for that's coming out on 50? Who are you when you saw the cast? I know that there were some disappointments from a lot of us diehard fans, but who were you going, oh man, thank God that person's on this season?
Anybody who's a two-timer, honestly, that's what I'm most excited about. I think four 3 or 4 times, it's too much. Like it's just too much. And you get people, I think 2 is the sweet spot. So like I think Rick Devens would qualify.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Rick Devens, I love that guy. I got to meet him in person, do some other stuff. I'm excited for Rick Devens. Um, I think that some of these other ones are going to surprise us, like Emily Flippin. I'm going to be
Mm-hmm.
interested to see what she does. I think 2 times is the sweet spot. You've played, you've lost, or you've won, or whatever. it's now you know a little bit more about the game and you're still hungry enough to keep going. By 3 and 4 times, there's less that feeling of consequence. So there's not that heightened drama when you do stuff. You're kind of like, I mean, even with like Sari, who's like a master, you know, I feel like that you've been in it so many times, there's not as much risk, or you don't feel as much risk in that way. So anybody who's played the second time, I would like to see back.
Because you've played with Ozzy and Sari. At this point, you know, you were on the island with them, and now you're going to watch them for both their fifth times.
Yes.
What do you feel like they can bring that's going to be different, or is it just, hey, they're the legends, we got to put them on?
I don't agree that they're they are legends. They're definitely legends, but like at the same time, I'm not interested to see more. I want to see like different. You know, it's almost like, what's the word? It's almost like eating a meatless burger in a way. Like you're like, oh, you're getting delivered this experience. It's not really, you know, Sari from Micronesia. Okay,
Yeah.
it's Sari after all these other things that she's done. Everyone, I love Sari. Everybody loves Sari. I think it's just timing, and it's a different place. And this cast, like, I want to see Dee. I want to see Emily. I want to see, let's see here, Kyle. Oh, Camilla and Kyle. I'd like to see them. I'm looking at the cast now, so I'm remembering everybody. Christian Hubicki, even, like, what is he going to do? They have the real Chrissy, so we're going to see what the real Chrissy does.
Yeah.
Oh, Tiff is on this too. Oh, is this Q? They have Q.
Yeah.
I totally forgot about this. Yeah, all these 2-timers are going to be great. I think the 2-timers are going to be the story to watch. I think anybody 3, like Coach, Ozzy, Sari, Colby, I think they're going to be secondary, to be honest. I think they're going to be in the way of these new era 2-time players. I could definitely be proven wrong. But Joe, I'm very interested to see Joe without Eva. What's going to happen there? Genevieve even. There's a lot of two-time players on here. So that's what I'm interested to see. And that's pretty much half the cast.
I like what you said there, because there's 12 new era, 12 pre-40, right? And I think what you said there might be, that's a take I haven't heard yet. And yet I think it might be one of the most accurate, which is Survivor knows that they need to create their new stars, right? And I'm kind of paraphrasing what you said, but it's like, they know they need to create their new stars because for 9 seasons now, we've watched nothing but newbies.
Yeah.
So you bring out 12 people that you think can be your new star, but then you bring out 12 people from pre-40. So you make sure that your diehards are really happy and they're going to tune in for this. But in reality, you're trying to create who's going to be our next generation of the Saris, of the Ozzies, of the Colbys, while also having those characters out there. Now, it could backfire, and you could have Colby, Coach, and Ozzy sitting in the final 3, and you go, oh, shit. Now all the new era people, we're going to sit there and go, ooh, they weren't nearly as good of players. But I do think that that's a really good point of allow your stars to be created while people are kind of watching who they have been used to watching while they're doing it. I think that's a good point. I don't think I've heard anybody say that.
Yeah. I didn't mean for it to be a casting, like, production assessment, but that's basically what I said. They're basically growing
without meaning to.
They're growing new stars. I was just looking at this cast and I was like, wow, there's a ton of 2-timers, and then there's some like legends. That's what they're doing. They're trying to incubate new stars. This is a new generation, new era incubator for Survivor stars.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great read on this. And so before we do go, I know that you have a book that's coming around in the future. I know that there's things going on with it now, but what's up with your book? I know that you've been talking about it like crazy on Instagram. So what's happening?
I did a memoir. It was 250 pages. It's a comic book. It is in publisher review. So it's in a legal and publisher review for edits. In the meantime, I'm looking at bringing back one other book, which is I'm going to do Survivor Comics Volume 2. So pretty much all the comics that I do for Survivor every episode, there's now been enough of them since season 42 that I can have a Volume 2, and that's going to come out next year. And then the other thing I'm bringing back is Starving for Attention, which is a completely legal parody about a fake reality show on an island. I took it offline just because I took it offline. There's nothing wrong with it. So I'm going to bring back Starving for Attention, and that'll probably be in the next month or two.
Love it. Love it. So make sure you're following Erik on all social media so that when his memoir does come out, go ahead.
The people don't know I'm me. So on Instagram, I'm Dabu Doodles. They like don't figure it out. Like they don't like I'm not Erik Reichenbach on Instagram. I'm Dabu Doodles. Like nobody figured it out. Wendell posted the other day, Dabu Doodles helped me make this sweet thing, and he finally put my Survivor picture on there, and all these followers started following me from Wendell's account because like nobody knows.
It's so funny because we just rewatched Fans vs. Favorites not too long ago for our Patreon, and when you say I could have said boo boo, gaga, whatever,
Yeah.
I just want to say dabu. It means nothing. At the time, that was people talked about that for so long, and it just feels like now season 16, people are so focused on the Black Widow and the fact that you gave up the necklace because they show it every season, but they forget about everything that kind of happened before the final 5 of that season.
Yeah,
and it's really funny because the early post merge of that season is one of the best of all time. And it's just funny to me that they don't associate you with Dabu Doodles, but I wonder if they would associate Boston Rob with Merlonio at this point, which was his daughter's doll and stuff. And that stuff was, if you're a diehard fan, this is stuff you remember. No bag,
Gangrene, all that kind of stuff. It's like and that's kind of why I chose Dabu Doodles. It was kind of like a lore, like a nod to that at the same time.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
there you go. So it's Dabu Doodles, everybody, not Erik Reichenbach. So go find him.
Yeah,
go find him. Awesome. All right. You have anything else, or should we close this out?
I'm all good. We're good.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Well, everybody, thank you all so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, patreon.com/thespecialist if you want to get even more Survivor coverage. We are up to Survivor One World. So we are barreling towards Survivor Caramoan. Talking about Survivor One World for the next 2-3 weeks. And then we get into Philippines. So that's fun. And then we get into Caramoan, which Erik, I don't know. Is that fun? Am I allowed to say it's not fun with you sitting here? Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I don't want to insult vanilla, but it's a little vanilla.
Some love it. Some like totally love it. And that's fine. Some don't. So
yeah. I fall probably closer to the second, but that's okay. But Erik, thank you so much for being here. I always love having you on. I think this is like the 3rd or 4th time. It's been a long time though since we've had you. So it's good to have you back. And everybody else, thanks for listening. Enjoy your Sunday, and I'll see you on. Actually, Tegwith is live tomorrow with Rachel. Again, Rachel from 47. She's back again. She's coming in, and she's gonna be doing Matt Chat with Tegwith tomorrow.
Wait, Lamont?
Yeah.
Ask her about that snake biting someone comment.
Oh, okay. Yes, I know. Should have bit harder.
That was spicy. That's
the cutthroat nature we need in New Era Survivor. All right, that's what we've been missing. What we've been missing. But Tegwith tomorrow, and then Will and I will be back on Wednesday night after the episode to recap. So we'll see you all then.
Sweet. Thanks, Phil.